diversity. We embrace our culture by celebrating all the lives and loves we see here, queer or not. Over the discussions in the past 2 days, we have learned much about queerness, its complexities and complications, and the many contexts that shape it. For our final module, we are bringing queerness home. To truly understand it and pass on this knowledge to students, we have to localize it, discuss it in a way that is relatable and tangible. Taking us through our final lesson is Professor Nerisa del Carmen Guevara. Professor Nerisa del Carmen Guevara is an associate professor at the University of Santo Tomas, where she teaches creative writing and is a resident fellow of the Center for Creative Writing and Literary Studies. She is the author of Reaching Destination Poems and the Search for Home, UST Publishing House 2004. She was the recipient of the Carlos Palanca Award for Poetry in 1999. Her poetry has been featured in various international publications and anthologies, including Cha Asian Journal, Hong Kong 2018. The Achieve of the Mastery, Filipino Poetry and Verse from English Mid-90s to 2016, Manila 2018. The Comstock Review, New York 2018. Tomas Journal, Manila 2018 and 2019. And Voice and Verse Poetry Magazine, Hong Kong 2020, among others. Her performance art has been exhibited worldwide in Performatura, Manila, SIPA International Arts Festival, Philippines, Biennale Yogya, Equator V, Indonesia, Lapsody, Helsinki, and Grace Exhibition Space in New York, among others. Her performance pieces, elegies, and infinite gestures are currently archived in the Art Digital Agency of London. She is currently the early career researcher of Global Grace WP4 and the director of Global Grace PH Air. Again, Professor Nerisa del Carmen Guevara.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to finally be able to talk and to see everybody. But the first thing that's going to happen is probably an assessment of where we're at right now, because we are moving actually into art. No? So my first question to everybody before we start the PowerPoint is, what is this made of? What is this made of? Anybody? What is this made of? Ollie? Ollie seems to have an answer. What is this made of?
Hi po. If we were to look at it physically, I think it's made out of paper or trees or other materials. Thank you.
Yeah. The entire seminar, everybody has been looking at the book this way, right? So you've been looking at it this way, or you've been shifting the screen this way. And then so the text is two-dimensional. No? But in this seminar, because how many hours have we actually spent in this seminar? How many? Around 18 hours, Ollie? It's around 18 hours, right? And we have been in duration in one space, in time, that in this duration, this has become a place. And this place is a virtual place. So even if you have not moved, this, because of the duration of our energies, attention, and even dissipation of attention, dissipation of actions, but the sheer belief that the place exists, we are all here, right? And this is one definition of a certain kind of reality or a certain kind of space that we have been in because we are in the pandemic. Okay? We can also call it something like a liminal space, And these liminal spaces are actually where marginalized people exist or are feeling more comfortable with, or just because heteronormative and other societal rules don't seem to apply. There is a lot of freedom in this kind of liminality, right? But now the majority is the majority that we have, we're all experiencing it right now. So welcome to bringing queerness home. This situation actually as an adjective is queer, right? And in duration, this is an embodiment, okay? This book has materiality, weight, and the body. And if I put it by the window, or if I put it on the pew somewhere, right, of a religious place, immediately it gains a layer of meaning. Okay, so talking to you guys about it right now is to recalibrate your way of seeing so that you can understand my lecture. Is it better? Okay, so let's start the PowerPoint. So I'm bringing it home. Okay, yeah. Next slide, please. There are just a few things I want to emphasize. So Stephen is going to be giving you a link, the general link to our air site. It's called GlobalGRACE Philippines Air. And we lived and generated an energetic, safe virtual space for 3 months. And in those 3 months, we had produced artwork and also kept in contact with each other, okay, through this virtual space and interacted all the way up to the website. Stephen or Mondi, have you given the site? Thank you very much. So you guys can click on that, right? While you're clicking through the site, our curators, Patrick Flores and Carlos Quijón, had said a couple of things, but what I want to emphasize is these entry-level artists, which are actually, they are close in age and experience to your students. They're very, very relatable, and they have created incredible artwork. And these curators said the context of their practices and communities form a part of this virtual space. And the works of these artists for the exhibition open up preconceived notions of what queerness involves, or the sufficiency of queerness as a term to encompass the variations, initiating conversations that are at times awkward or uncomfortable, but always will be striving for sympathy or the radical imagination of commonality through and beyond different. So there seems to be other sounds. Okay, next slide, please. As literature professors, you might use this site as intertext or sites of, springboards and creative prompts for your students. But these are the objectives that I want to teach you. So it's actually pretty broad, and maybe some of you are teaching art app, and this is more of an art appreciation module, right? So I'm going to define and characterize creative process journals of various artistic forms and identify points of intermediation and relationship between teacher and student in the creation of an artwork, and discuss some young LGBTQ artist themes as evidenced in their arts. Next slide, please. So creative process journals are actually anything they want to submit that actually tracks the process of art. So these particular interventions that happen are actually just, but art has always been procedural. And what happens when a queer site or a queer book intervenes specifically in a heteronormative place, an energy, a certain kind of energy is created, right? And if the processes of queer people are out there, they generate this kind of energy and they attract a particular community so that they can actually do art as well. So you just read what a creative process journal can be. It can be an MP3, it can be an MP4, it can be a PDF, something like that. What I'm showing you is an example that's public. It's from Jing Lin. Next slide, please. So every week, your students, so if it's a student-centered thing, they check in on you. And they check in by actually talking to you about their process. Next slide, please. So these are just journal entries, photographs that inspire them for the moment. Next slide, please. Their motivation, submission of their concepts. And this is what the entry-level artists in AIR did for 3 months. They did like 6 CPJs. Next slide, please. Right? Next slide, please. So, they talk about the feedback that they got, all of that. So where do the lectures of art come in? They actually come in and are pretty much elective, but the main thing that they're going to do is actually create art. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Right? See, just so many things of reflections. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So many thoughts, coming into learning what art is about. So it's really, it will actually be easier to introduce queer art if art is in praxis, right? Next slide, please. See, just pictures, just reflections. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I believe in fun and praxis. I believe in sharing and community. So group activities must enhance this kind of communication and rely on simple and readily available objects and materials. So you can build an installation together, compose a poem or a song together, encourage assemblage and collage. The thing here is to be inclusive. So there are queer voices, there are straight voices, everyone has a seat in the room, okay, going through the same process. And in that way, there is some kind of equality happening. Next slide, please. Individual activities, you can make self-portraits. A concept is any idea they want to explore. So it's a statement of something. And usually they are queer statements or any statement that they feel they need to bring, right, onto the table. Next slide, please. So what's the culminating output? You make or co-create an artwork. It's a physical or visual exhibition. You use social media platforms and virtual and physical games for performance work. So there is just a whole lot of stuff that you can explore when you do the creative process journals and when you create little residencies. So the way that you should be looking at art would probably be the way of asking yourself as a teacher, what community does your students have, right? Geographically, how is everyone located? Where are they? What is this throbbing organism of a society that is happening here? And then so here in this virtual residency, for 3 months, majority were queer. Actually, 95% of us were queer. And then we were all just interacting and creating art. Next slide, please. So there are key points, discussion of the image. I think those who have studied in UP have read this in their basic Hume classes. Next slide, please. Most of you probably recognize this, right? Next slide, please. Medium and techniques, all of these things. Next slide, please. Dimensions and measurements, when you start looking at art. Next slide, please. Date of work, provenance. Next slide, please. So the AIR residency actually had 5 queer participants from Los Baños, Bai, Mabitac, San Pedro, San Pablo, Binyan, and Cabuyao. So if you look at the map, we had this virtual Laguna. And in your classroom, whether it's a creative writing thing or any other thing, right? And I don't know how long this pandemic is going to happen. This is one way to really, really connect with everyone else. Okay, so next slide, please. So queerness as sexual desire. But before we, okay, next slide. Can you please give them the link to ISMA's work? Can you tell me what form this is? Can you scroll down and click on the 3D? What is this? Literature? What is it? Scroll down. Click on anything. Welcome to interdisciplinary art. We have been creating for 3 months these queer interventions in heteronormative space. Okay. Would you believe that this is CW to zine? This is a zine during the time of the pandemic. I love Ollie's reaction. I also love Rowena's reaction. This is how we have made connections, and this is how we have done space. Scroll down, please. There's a 3D version of this. Yan. Click on that. View 3D. See? Incredible. Amazing work. We have 15 artists, and because there are several themes, I won't be able to discuss all the artists in all of the themes, but you guys are going to be given this entire document where all the links actually lead to the different themes. That's beautiful. This is the work of one of our artists called Isma, right? But let's move on to, queerness as sexual desire, and also queerness as embodiment. We feel that there are certain characteristics that make a person queer, but when you view the site, you're going to understand that here I am drinking a glass of water is still me being queer, right? If I cough, if I sneeze, I am queer. I'm no different. You see? And the themes, these things that you're going to be seeing will show you that. Okay, so let's move on to Lex Dignos, Not Me. This is a 2-minute animation video. Queerness as sexual desire. I think there's no sound yet. Did you like that? Yeah. And it is a very different way of experiencing desire, non-linguistic art. You know, you see it through medium and you see it through gesture, through drawing. So it's definitely a different type of text, no? Um, the next one, so this one talks about the misconception. The next one is talks about sexuality, actually. The function of fiction is abstraction. Please. The first minute.
Oo naman.
For the information of everyone, reproduction is the process in which organisms give rise to new organisms or offspring. It is one of the defining characteristics of living things. It allows organisms to produce new individuals to perpetuate para palaganapin ang kanilang species.
Happy Pride!
Ay, pero yung mga asexual, hindi sila kasali kasi wala naman silang sexuality.
Check it out, y'all. Check it out, y'all.
Feeling ko mas marami pa akong genuine, meaningful online relationships through Neopets than a fucking dating site.
Ladies and gentlemen.
LGBT, LGBTQ, LGBTQIA+, NCR+, MECQ community.
Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. Can I get feedback from all these really wonderful reactions that I'm seeing? Si Ian had a great reaction. Ian, Embadura.
Yes po, it was so psychedelic, like, yeah, trippy. Kasi parang it's just a mishmash of anything that the artist could think of, but somehow it makes sense that it doesn't make sense.
Which really reflects the feeling of telling your own story as an asexual, going through this kind of tension of trying to make sense, also trying to define, or also holding on to the fact that it's all ambiguous as well. So there are just many ways to relate to this kind of text, right? Next, please. So queerness as sexual desire, right? So queerness as gender identity. Next, please. We have been hearing this term a really long time, Pepper Paminta, okay? Please give them the link to Pepper. Thank you. And please play Pepper.
If you were given the complete protection of anonymity, what story would you be able to tell? Pepper is a two-dimensional digital avatar that uses motion capture to detect the user's actions and recreate it on the screen. The users are able to express themselves through the model's customization features. Not only will this give them a veil of anonymity that could free them from judgment and anxiety, but also provide them a platform to express their ideal selves even in a virtual setting. These avatar models will capture their movements live as they tell their story. Pepper's avatar is completely customizable. You would be able to choose from multiple hairstyles, clothing, and accessories, making Pepper unique to every person. After determining how you want your Pepper to look like, you can use a motion tracking program to give life to your avatar. Pepper uses your webcam to track your eyes, mouth, and head movement to mirror your own actions. This program can be used as an alternate to your webcam, so you'll be able to appear as Pepper during video conferences. So many individual stories are never expressed or heard from people who have the innate fear of judgment. As a person who found her voice through the live animation platform, I aim to provide this same platform to many others out there who might be in need to burst out of the chains of silence and be heard. In the height of the pandemic, there's a rise of people who feel stuck in their own homes. If you or anyone you know are one of them, I wholeheartedly encourage you to give Pepper a try. A download link and a full list of instructions can be found in the site alongside this video. I sincerely hope that you would be able to find your voice and express yourself at your best.
Tristan, you were saying something. What do you think of this? The pandemic, queer art during the pandemic has found many ways to try and still make connections. So this is a very rich site for that. And it's also a reinterpretation of Pepper, the paminta, into there's a reclamation of the term as something more positive, actually a safe space. Tristan, are you there? I think it's a way of yes. And it has a tinge of sadness, anonymity, right? Great. I think your senior high school students, your students will like this. I'm sure they can relate somehow. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. So with 6 advisors, they were exploring different art forms, and you are going to notice that spoken word is very different from poetry, but there might be intersections here, and I want you to listen to Isay and how she navigates identity, because it's not only sexual gender identity, but also something it's geographical identity. Please play. Thank you.
After years of verbal sparring in Singlish, English became second nature. When my mouth scrambles for words, it picks vegetables over gulay, laundry over labahan, shower over hilamos. In grade 3, I stood for the whole period. Foreign transfer student in my own hometown, the question in Filipino ringing like static white noise in between FM radio stations. In grade 4, I told a friend to move her iced tea kasi baka maula, and she didn't understand because the correct word is naula, which is Bicol for spill. When I speak in Filipino, the words spill clumsily no matter how carefully I curate them, the thoughtfulness lost in my best effort at translation. This fear of being misunderstood taught me to pick my words apart, dissecting every nuance. So when I was asked how I identified, I didn't have the words for it. Open to dating anyone, I called myself. Open for short. Wiki surfing and Tumblr deep dives taught me there's more than just tomboy or bakla. Suddenly, there was a whole host of identities I could pick and choose from. While Comp had told me to date guys, I would run in the opposite direction at the first signs of a serious relationship. I cut off my hair, partly because I was told I couldn't pull it off, partly because I wanted to be seen as gay. In my second year of college, I had my first ever panic attack when my org seniors grilled me about my crush, asking, "But would you really date her if you had the chance?" And so I dated her. Well, not her exactly, but a girl. And when we kissed, my entire romantic history paled in comparison. At first, lesbian felt thick on my tongue, the syllables too heavy to glide naturally. But then I thought, how beautiful is it to be named after Lesbos, home to Sappho, a poet known for proclaiming her love of women and their beauty. It was the perfect word.
Thank you. Rowena, how do you feel about this, right?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Uh, I'm straight actually. I am very interested in joining this webinar because I have so many friends who are members of the LGBT community, and I have so many students too who are members of this community, and I want to understand them better. When I hear this performance of Isay Gavika, it was heartfelt for me because I could understand that some of my students are actually like her. Many of them have the difficulty of expressing themselves and are still trying to find ways of explaining who they are to the people around them, including teachers like me. And so I find this very enlightening, as well as the other presentations that you gave a while ago, especially those that are related to art, because I'm not just teaching HUME students creative writing and creative nonfiction. I'm also teaching arts and design students. And I think that they could relate more to the other materials that you have presented, aside from the written materials that were already presented to us. So I think it's a better way of self-expression and a better way of, expressing this side of themselves that cannot be fully expressed through words. So I think generally these materials you have presented are very enlightening for me as a teacher.
Mm-mm. Thank you, Rowena. I need you to stay because we're moving to queerness and family. And remember what other speakers. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Can we, next slide. Do you have the link to this, Rowena? Maybe you can read it better.
Yeah, I have actually. Teka muna ha. I'll try to access it again. I did. I found I had a link a while ago.
How to survive a family dinner, conversation, or garden. You pick.
Okay.
Any paragraph. 2 paragraphs.
Teka muna. How to survive. Nawala siya.
It's in the dining room.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Dining room. Okay. Sorry. How to survive a family dinner conversation. The dining room is usually a war of attrition between you and your family and relatives. It's where you get asked all the socially acceptable questions that make you uncomfortable, as if everyone is waiting to ask the next question that'll cause you to walk out. The people who ask are plenty. The, from your own family, your OFW father who only comes home once a year for a month, some familiar relatives who come to visit every week, or a far away far away aunts and uncles who visit on special occasions. They all ask the same questions. Ba't ka nagpagupit? Gusto mo ba maging lalaki? Akala mo lang ayaw mo magpakasal, pero dadaan ka din dyan. Kailan mo kami bibigyan ng apo? May boyfriend ka, di ba? Buti naman. Akala namin tomboy ka eh. Ba't ganun ka manamit? Mukha kang prosti. In addition to this, you hear things that may not be directed at you, but make you just equally as uncomfortable because your cousins can hear. Bakla ka ba? Nako, bakla ka ata eh. Mahilig ka sa BTS? Pambakla yun. Hindi pala totoong babae or lalaki yun. You can grit your teeth and grind your food silently, hoping that the faster you eat will mean the faster that you can get out of here. You can also argue back. Both options will result in your utter defeat. The only way to make it out alive is to eat your dinner alone in the back of the kitchen or pretend not to hear anything.
Wonderful, no? So,
Yeah.
Instead of giving
Love it.
bullets and PowerPoints, you
Yeah.
just put the heading on, give it,
Yes.
and spend
Yeah,
time
yeah.
in contemplation. The fact that it's three-dimensional, there's just so much texture, even if it's virtual. This is the benefit of that kind of interdisciplinary work.
Yeah.
Because there are not many rules. There's just so much groundbreaking stuff that can happen, right? So I'm moving forward to, I'm looking at our time. So I'm moving forward to queerness and mythology. Stephen. Because this will be given to you anyway. Next slide. Yeah. Okay, next slide. This is Alex Crisologo, and he is a professional mermaid, and this is his dream map, Tagipnep. His advisor was Irma Lacorte. Next slide, please. So he painted on a door, and he has the tower and the mountains. Next slide, please. The pit, waterways, the baths. Next slide, please. The city, labyrinth, fear. Next slide, please. Please watch his video. So, as queer people, Joanna actually talked about how you can create your own mythology if you cannot find a mythology anywhere else, right? So here is the mythology of our professional mermaid, Alex. Play, please.
Kumusta? I'm going to make a video of explaining the different locations of my dream map titled Tagitnep. And I'm here because I want to show one of the places I actually dreamt about. So here it is. And I'll be explaining it over a few more, so I hope you enjoy po.
So just to give a little bit of a background of the art piece that I made, it's made of an old door that I found around the neighborhood, and I used Taal ash as my medium and also Gao Gao so that I could make like somewhat of a paint of it. The reason why I chose Taal ash is to represent that something from inside the earth could actually represent something inside of you. Kind of something like that. And the first one here is the tower. It shows a tall square building, a quadrilateral building, and inside of it, it's quite interesting because although it is abandoned and there are lots of old things inside, it's kind of like an old sanitarium. So it's one of the scariest places that I often, unfortunately, would go to in my dreams. The next one, which I really like, is the mountains. And fortunately, in the mountains, we have here something that I could easily relate to because I grew up in the mountains. But the mountains in my dreams look very, very different. Surprisingly, it is extremely similar to Tarao Cliff, almost the same one in my dream, which is found in El Nido. The pit is just a simple hole on the ground. I always see it in my dream as like an entrance to the next part of my dream. Its purpose is simply like an entrance, almost something like I would find just to run away from something, usually running away from certain monsters. So the pit would always appear there. And when you go into the pit, you would go to my favorite place, which is the waterways. The waterways is a sewer-like system, but the water, of course, is extremely clean, and inside it there would be caverns and beautiful tunnels made with different kinds of fish. I've always loved this part because this part I would see the most interesting, the most absurd things relating to water things like fish and so on. Okay. After that, once you get out of it again, you would go to a city very similar to the city of Atlantis. In the picture, it's the best that I could find to represent it. But of course, all the pictures that I used to talk about these different locations in my dreams are not entirely the same. I'm just looking for the closest image as I could. And going back to the city. The city is a part where everything has a roadway. It's almost like a waterway where people can travel, and everything just travels by water. Okay. The next one here would be the baths. For some reason, every time I dream about bathrooms, not like Turkish baths or anything, but different kinds of bathrooms. There have been many times that I dreamt of going to a bathroom, and later in years, I would actually discover that bathroom that I saw in my dream. One example would be that beautiful bathroom, that beautiful powder room, let's say, in Pinto Art Gallery. And I just remember clearly in my dream that I saw the same design, the same style of artwork done with that bathroom. Yes, kind of weird, but it's what I see in my dreams all the time. Okay. The next one here is actually not something that is often that I visit, but I remember very distinctly that it is always there. It is a labyrinth that is moss covered, and it's not like the labyrinth that we would see, for example, in old myths, but rather a more surreal or a more geometric. Well, it is after all geometric, but kind of like in my own style, how my mind would create it. The last one, which is actually very interesting, is my fear. I do a lot of swimming and I enjoy the sea, but I am extremely afraid of the sea. And here, it symbolizes my fear and also my braveness, basically, to go towards the unknown. And I showed here in the picture, actually it's taken using my phone because for some reason I actually ended up where I ended up the last picture here, which is my representation for fear. I am actually staying in it right now, and in the last picture and also at the beginning of this video, I showed you how exactly it would look like in my dream. It is vast, it is with weird rock formations that I have never seen ever in my life until I came here. So I think that the fear in my dream at the time before I even came to this place actually represented what was going to be something that I would be coming to. So, in a way, it's almost like overcoming your fear or actually encountering your fear and then accepting it. So, overall, thank you very much. That is all about the different locations of my dream map, which I think I would improve on more, explore on more in the next years to come. Thank you.
Melvin, and I want to know, like, so you watched Alex's explanation of Tagipnep, and this is, yes, Christopher, a worlding exercise. Um, how different can he be from the rest of your students, you think? Melvin Silos. Melvin? Melvin Silos?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Melvin. What did you think? I
Akin,
saw you. Yeah.
narinig po ba ako?
Yes.
Sorry, medyo mahina po kasi yung internet namin. Medyo tuloy yung video na napanood ko. But I think it's more, the video shows more on I think it's hidden unconscious on the part of, the desires of being. And on the other hand, hello?
Hello, yes, yes. On the other hand, pwede kang mag-audio na lang, Melvin. Nawala yata si Melvin. Next person, Leo Ben. What do you think?
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. When I
Yeah.
was watching it, it's more on, I was thinking, how would I do this as well? And in a manner of, sana ganito din ako kabibid managinip. As in, uh, I don't know, that's the thing that's coming through my mind. I'm going to do this activity for my students, or I'm going to process this with my students. Sorry po, nakikinig po ba ako? My internet is
Yes.
a bit unstable. Uh, can you can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
All right. So in terms of my students, since I'm teaching teacher education students, it's more on how they are going to explore more on themselves, right? On and yeah, and using this dream map, right? And in going places, in going in understanding themselves more, right? So
Yeah.
because in in dreams, right? We are really going into our subconscious, and more often than not, yun yung parang nagiging kung sino tayo, parang it's reflecting who we really are. And if we can do that in school, that
Yeah.
would be a great a great avenue to really explore themselves. And if someone is struggling on identifying him or herself, they or them, uh, it would be a great way, right? Or it could create I think a safe space to discuss this, right? Because it would be I think indirect in a way,
Yeah.
right? So
Also, I
if,
think you would notice that if you were expecting stereotypical gay characteristics, they did not manifest, but
yeah,
this is definitely an artist. So, there's just a freedom to be yourself and to create the art within that particular identification. So, what kind of stereotypes are we actually looking for? There is more exploration in art. Actually,
yes,
in things that are simple desires, other desires that are not cliche in that way. So thank you, Leo Ben.
thank you po.
We're moving on to next slide, please. So in Queerness and Mythology, we have Faith Ibanez, and she had reclaimed the phoenix. I'm just showing slides. So from the ashes, next slide, the scissors will be cutting through male garments. Next slide. And she transfigures and transforms into the phoenix. And shines through, burns through the ashes. Faith Ibanez is a wonderful fashion designer using recycled materials to make her work, and also she is doing something called performance art to show this particular intervention in heteronormative space. So if you actually watch the video, you're going to see a space. Gardens are usually heteronormative, and then she puts herself, intervenes in that particular space to shine in this beautiful evening pageant-like gown, right? So that is wonderful. Just creating your own mythology or adding to traditional mythology. Next, please. We have the same for Kishan. She's a goddess. The life of an absolute goddess is the life of an absolute universe. My existence is truth. Hence, in truth, we exist. And she is creating a garden on her skin. Took her 4 hours to do it. And next slide, please. Swerve to the right, I curve my fingers. Nature's rhythm manifested in me. Magic flows through my veins as the right-handed goddess. So, calling yourself the goddess, taking the power of that, the vision of that, making yourself the garden within the garden that is only reserved for Adam and Eve, right? So that kind of physical intervention and then editing it into film with poetry, it is just a beautiful experience, a positive, emancipatory experience. Next slide, please. So next slide, please. So queerness and well-being, one of the lectures for today. So being loved well. Next slide, please. Can you please play Lial? Another spoken word, please.
Kada hakbang sa lupa'y para akong inaalon, nalulunod sa batikos ng mundo, sa kung ano lamang ang kaya ko. Bigang-bigat Heto na, kalmado na. Tahimik ang paligid, walang umuusyoso, bukas na ang pinto. Walang mapagsilda ng saya, hindi mabilang ang bawat hakbang. Hakbang palabas ng pintong ilang taong nakakandado. Hindi magkamayaw kung saan patungo ang mga paang matagal nang hindi nakakalabas. Ito na. Ito na ang oras. Oras na matagal ko nang hinihintay. Oras na hindi ko inakalang darating. Ngiti sa mga labi ay hindi mapigilan. Parang damdamin ng isang presong bagong laya sa kubo. Malaya. Malaya na sa mga panghuhusga. Malaya na sa takot na nadarama. Malaya na sa sakit na ilang taon na sa bansa. Malaya na ako. Malaya na ang dalagang matagal na nagtatago. Malaya na mula sa sarili kong multo. Hindi na iniinda ang sasabihin ng iba. Sariling pagtanggap pala ang sagot. Hindi pagdisan at pagtago. Handa na ako. Handa na akong ipakita sa mundo. Handa na akong lumabas kasama ang mga taong tanggap ako at ang mga taong sasamahan ako. Sasamahan ako sa landas na pinili. Sasamahan ako sa makulay kong mundo. At sabihin, ako naman muna.
It's from tahanan, but the safety comes from within and the acceptance comes from within. And it's also in spoken word and translated into film in this way. And it really projects that beautiful atmosphere of just acceptance and well-being. Next, please. During the pandemic, next slide, please. Some went into fantasy, and this is a documentary project under Nana Buksani called Bagong Realidad. Play, please. Thank you. So it's a very, the pandemic definitely was a very serious, is still a very serious situation, but then you can see how it has been treated by this particular queer artist. Uh, and I think it's wonderful that everyone here is seeing all the artworks that you can use as creative prompts, as intertext for particular themes, and also for your art appreciation classes, or even 21st century Philippine contemporary art, right? Considering this will fit very nicely within the memo. So thank you all. You'll be given the full list.